and welcome to the Sound Off Show. My name is Linda Kirker. I host the program, and thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. I think we're going to have some interesting topics for you. My guest is always a well-informed person, and I enjoy having him on the program. I hope you're getting ready for spring. I'm ready already. It's just that the weather hasn't gotten the message yet. But, yeah, the snow can go now. Thank you. Anyway, hope you've had a good week, and I'm going to introduce my guest, and we'll get on with the show. When the phone number comes up, it's already up on the screen, great. As we get into our discussion, if you have something heavy on your mind and you'd like to pose a question or just make a comment, feel free to call in, and we'd be happy to hear from you. So with that, my guest is someone who's on here periodically, thankfully, and I'd like to welcome him back.
Hi,
Rob
Linda.
Roper.
Good to see you.
You too. I have cold hands, but a warm heart. So thanks for driving all the way over here from Stowe.
It's always fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. So you keep a busy life, I know, like I do. You're probably even busier than I am because I don't move as fast as I once did. But anything in particular that's wearing on your brain and your heart that you would like to start off with tonight? We have so much going on in the state and in the country.
Oh my goodness, Linda. Well, I've spent a lot of years down at the State House, poking around and hanging out in the cafeteria and in all of the committee rooms and whatnot, and following the bills. And I got to say, this is the craziest year. Last year was a weird year. It seemed kind of slow and not a whole lot was happening. This year, it's the sluice stores are open, and it's all sorts of stuff is coming out, and it really is. It's very frightening because you look at a lot of lower income working people, and they're going to get slammed by this legislature. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of those folks in the legislature think that they're doing all this for the poor and the working poor and the middle class, but they are not. You look at the $15 minimum wage. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that people aren't discussing about the $15 minimum wage. It's just, this is wonderful. We're going to give everybody a raise. Until you consider that the majority of people who live in households that are designated as, in quotes, poor, the majority of them don't earn a W-2 income. They're, senior citizens on a fixed income or on a pension income, or they're younger people who are in a social service, in a safety net program. Mm-hmm. They're on fixed incomes. So the majority of people who are poor are on fixed incomes. It means they don't get a raise, but it does mean that the goods and services that they buy with those fixed incomes don't stretch as far under a $15 minimum wage. So the $15 minimum wage at the end of the day is going to hurt more low-income people than it's going to help. And, we can go on and on about that one issue, but if I could just sort of hit the menu before we get into the weeds on some of these. Paid family leave, that's another one paid family leave, isn't that wonderful? If you have a child, you'll get to stay home. This is a $100 million plus entitlement program. Mm-hmm.
Another one.
That is going to be paid for with a new payroll tax of almost 1%. And you say, just 1%. That doesn't sound like a lot. Well, you think of it, the lowest, if you're making a paycheck, the lowest income tax bracket in Vermont is 3.25%. So 1% on top of 3.25% is a 28% income tax increase. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about taking the lowest working, paid employees in the state and slapping them with what amounts to a 28% income tax increase. That's a serious amount of money. And that doesn't even begin to talk about all of the problems that it's going to create for small businesses in the state.
Well, and talk about those, because that's another factor whereby people will lose jobs.
People will lose jobs. But I want to go down the whole list before we get into the weeds on this stuff.
You go.
They are in the healthcare committee now talking about an insurance mandate. The Obamacare had an insurance mandate that if you didn't buy insurance, you had to pay a fine. Mm-hmm. Well, the Trump administration pretty much nixed that. But Vermont wants to bring it back. And
of course.
Bill Lippert, who's the chairman of the House Healthcare Committee, here saying, if you're a low-income Vermonter, you're going to have to pay a $675 a year fine if you don't have health insurance, or up to 2% of your income, whichever number is lower. So that's another big hit to the poor. Mm-hmm. And then my favorite subject is the carbon tax.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the thing, and you hear the Speaker of the House and the Senate President pro tem getting up there saying, look, we're not talking about a carbon tax this year. We've got other things on our plate, like the things that I just mentioned. However, they are talking about, in committees, non-pricing solutions to reducing our carbon footprint. Well, non-pricing solutions, okay, that sounds good. Maybe they got the message. They're not going to tax us.
Yeah.
The carbon tax, they're going to look at other solutions that don't involve a carbon tax. Things like more weatherization programs, more subsidies for weatherization programs, more subsidies or new subsidies for putting people in electric vehicles, more subsidies for electric charging stations, more subsidies for renewable energy. So somebody says, at the end of this presentation, well, where are we going to get the money to pay for all these subsidies for all these non-pricing solutions? Oh, well, we have to have a carbon tax. So they need carbon pricing to pay for all the non-pricing solutions that they're talking about. And the number that they threw up for that was $600 million over 10 years. So over $500 million in carbon taxes over a 10-year period to pay for all these solutions. And and believe me, that would just be the tip of the iceberg. So if you're a low-income Vermonter, you're looking probably at, you're probably not going to make any money from the $15 minimum wage. If your wage goes up as a result of the minimum wage, you will probably lose whatever gains you made in terms of benefits and taxes.
It's a shell game. It's just, saying one thing and it sounds good, and then they destroy it with something else.
Yes, and so don't count on that to help very much. You've got the paid family leave tax, 25% income tax on the lowest income tax bracket in the state. You've got this health insurance mandate, as much as $675 a year in fines. You've got carbon taxes coming down the road on your home heating fuel and your gasoline for your car.
Are they going to do that?
Oh, I think absolutely. I mean, the folks in Montpelier, particularly the young ones, and we can talk about this too if we have time in the program, is that the growing popularity of socialism among millennials.
Oh, we will.
And Generation Z members. Those are the folks who got elected in this last cycle. It's all the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez model Democrats. Got elected. There were 41, I think, new members of the House
in Vermont.
This last session, and out of 150, so almost a third of the people down there are new. The Republicans got creamed, so there aren't very many new Republicans down there. So, say probably 33, 35 new Democrats, and they're all young and very much in the model of these democratic socialists that are coming into play. And that's why you're seeing all these bills. But they want a carbon tax. A lot of the money that was spent to get them elected through special interest groups were the Green New Deal PACs. So not only do they ideologically think that this is the right thing to do, there's payback involved too. We got you elected. So, now is the time to pay back or dance with the one that brought you.
Well, maybe if those who are newly elected, plus some others, because there's a big imbalance party-wise in both houses, the House and the Senate in Vermont, big majorities of Democrats. If they put through these bills, and the voters, the people of the state of Vermont, start feeling the pain, maybe they'll be doing a big favor to people from the opposite party in getting elected the next time.
Well, I hope there has to be a connection that's made between who's doing this down in Montpelier and the effect. I talked to a lot of people who ran for office last time, and they say that there's just really not that connection being made. That they feel the pain of property taxes. They feel the pain of, they understand a carbon tax would be terrible at the gas pump, but they don't connect those higher taxes to the Democrats and the progressives. which is really who's doing this. So maybe this will be the year that it makes
Well, you have
makes
to
a difference.
You have to do a good job of connecting the dots when
Yeah.
you're running for office.
You do, but it's, I think that conversation needs to start now.
I do too.
It's connecting the dots because a lot of times people wait until the campaign season, and then when you get into the campaign season, whoever the incumbent is spent the last year and a half building up their brand
Sure.
and building up that trust, and if no one's challenging them in the moment, what are you talking about? I've known this guy for a year and a half, and he's a great guy, you know.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me he voted for this, and this. Well, yes, he did. No, I don't believe it. And that's a real problem because they know your name. They hand out cookies at town meeting day, and they say nice things to you when they see you that maybe they remember your name, but they are taxing you out of the state.
You are making a really good point, Rob, in that what I see is that there are not many people in Vermont and maybe elsewhere who actually pay attention to what is happening and who's doing what in Montpelier.
Yep.
And if you don't pay attention, and when things come up and you don't speak out about them and say, hey, wait a minute, and call your legislators. It's easy to leave a message for them, 828-2228. I have it memorized. And the Sergeant at Arms office. Mm-hmm. You can call and you can leave your name and your town and the name of your legislator and say, please get this message to Senator X. Please do not vote for whatever it is, and they'll get the message. And if enough people do that, it may make them stop and think, hey, there are people paying attention, and maybe we can't get away with this anymore.
Well, and that's what our organization, the Ethan Allen Institute, is there to help people do, is pay attention. And our mission is to give people the tools that they need and the information that they need to be an informed and active citizen.
You
like
provide.
This. And, one of the things that we do is, during the session, we have real-time roll call vote
votes.
reports.
Yeah.
So if they vote on an important issue, we try within 72 hours to get an analysis up of that vote, telling you in real, just basic English. This is what the bill was about. This is what the vote meant. Those voting yes did so because. Those voting no did so because. And then we give a list of all how they voted. With most of the time there'll also be links to, if you want more information, there'll be some articles or a Joint Fiscal Office report or something like that. If you want to get into the weeds, you can. But if you just want the simple explanation, that's there.
And that explanation is so critically important. If you're trying to understand why people did or did not vote, for a particular bill. And before you make your call, you have to have an understanding of what it is that you want from your elected official. So my head spins because there is so much going on that runs counter to what I think makes sense. Mm-hmm. I'm only one person, but I think that we need to put a damper on some of these things that are going on and letting the people that have been elected know that you just can't run wild. You're spending our money, you're putting regulations on us, you're controlling aspects of our lives, you're making it more difficult in some ways, and we don't like it.
Yeah. No, you have to pay attention and you have to be vocal.
Or you get more of the same.
Or you get more of the same. But if it's okay, I'd like to talk about the details of some of the programs that we brought up in the beginning. I'll start with the $15 minimum wage. And this is, again, one of those things that it sounds great on the bumper sticker, the fight for 15, and you want, but before I came here, I confess, I hope my wife isn't watching. I went to McDonald's and got a quarter pounder before I came here. Well, there's a big tablet there now. So instead of, going up and ordering it from a human being, you just push the tablet and that's how you order. Because I'm sure that doesn't cost $15 an hour to maintain
exactly
that machine. And that's what's going to happen to a lot of jobs.
Replacing
low
people.
entry-level jobs. And young people today who are just entering the workforce need to get that experience.
Yes.
And if it's so expensive that it's not worth it to the employer, then those people are going to, miss out on the first rung of the ladder of success. The higher you make that first rung on the ladder of success, the fewer number of people can actually access the ladder. And that's not fair. So that, we talked a little bit about how this is going to affect senior citizens. We're the second oldest state in the union. I want to know where the AARP is on this, because if they were actually advocating for their members, they would be violently opposed to the $15 minimum wage, because people living on fixed incomes are not going to get a benefit. They're not going to see their wages increase as a result of the $15 minimum wage, but they are going to see the cost for goods and services go up. And a big part of that cost is health care. So if you're a senior citizen, there's a couple of ways this is going to really negatively impact your health care in the state. One is the people who are employed in the healthcare system. There was an estimate it's going to cost, I think it's a total of about $60 million for Medicare and Medicaid. Increased costs to deliver Medicare and Medicaid services if the $15 minimum wage bill passes.
Not in the state.
Yeah, in the state.
In the state.
In this state. So if we pass the $15 minimum wage in Vermont, you're looking at $60 million worth of cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. Or, I think about $10 million of that is for Medicare, which is a federal program. So we don't have any flexibility. We can't just say, okay, we'll raise the tax because that's a federal program. The money that comes in is the money you get. So if you're a senior citizen on Medicare, you're looking at $10 million worth of cut services because of the $15 minimum wage. Now on Medicaid, we do have some control over the taxes that pay for the Medicaid, but that's $50 million. So those other of us, the taxpayers, are going to end up having to pay $50 million in higher taxes to cover the costs of what would be otherwise Medicaid cuts. Or we're going to cut the Medicaid services by $50 million as a result of the $15 minimum wage. So that's what they're not telling you about what this will do. Mm-hmm. Another aspect that I think is important to people understand about the $15 minimum wage is childcare.
Oh boy, yes.
I mean, we say that this is, there's a child care crisis out there because, there are, and they are, this would be a topic for another show maybe, they are actively trying to put out of business the small home providers.
Private daycare.
The private providers, so that the public school system can come in and take over that business.
They've already done a lot of that.
Oh, they've been doing it for over a decade.
With all
it's a
the
massacre.
regulations. I mean,
that's the point. That's the point of that. I don't want to get in the weeds on that because I really want to hammer what's happening with the $15 minimum wage though. Is for childcare, it's going to hit young families in two ways. One, if you're currently making a minimum wage and you get bumped up to the $15 under the minimum wage, the Joint Fiscal Office in Vermont has determined that you will lose more in child care benefits than you will gain in income.
Because it's based on your income?
It's based on your income. It's what's called the benefits cliff. So you will fall off the benefits cliff. You'll get about $1,300 more in benefits, or more in salary as a result of the $15 minimum wage.
Over the year?
Over the year, but you will lose something like $13,200 in child care subsidies. So you'll lose more. But here's the other thing. Because a lot of people won't be able to pay to have that, the higher cost of child care as a result, you're going to see the child cares go out of business. Some of them will.
The private ones.
The ones that stay in business are going to be more expensive. In fact, one of a prominent child care center in my hometown was at a legislative breakfast, and they said, if the $15 minimum wage comes into effect, it will cost my families $40 per week more. To come for us to have their child in child care. $40 a week. So if you've got two kids in a child care system, that's $80 a week.
And that's to pay the people who work at the daycare.
To pay the people who work at the child care.
Because that money has to come from somewhere.
It has to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from young families. So not if the $15 minimum wage passes and you're a young family, not only are you going to have less money in terms of help from the state to get your kids into child care, The childcare that you're going to be trying to find spots for is going to be less available because some of them are going to go out of business, and it's going to be more expensive overall.
We've lost quite a few.
That is not being discussed when it comes to the $15 minimum wage.
And you know what the bottom line is? To get more children into the school system. I don't think pre-K should be a part of the schools.
Well, you and me, we've been fighting that one for a long time.
Kindergarten, yes. But that's it. Anything prior to that needs to be in your neighborhood, you know, or you find a way, like my grandson and his wife have a little baby, and they found a way to work out a schedule. You know, she's a nurse, she works different hours, and he takes the baby to daycare a couple of days a week on his way to work, and, you know, they figured it out. But in the old days, you either stayed home and took care of your child, or if there was a woman in the neighborhood who decided to have a daycare that gave her some income, and it was a resource for the neighborhood folks who had children.
That's the best solution.
I think so.
And that's the most effective solution, I think. But they're not letting it happen anymore.
No, because they have an ulterior motive.
They do. They want to drive those community centers out of business so that the teachers union can take over those positions. And the tab for that, Linda, is $800 million a year is what they want for a birth to 5 program. That's what the Let's Grow Kids is asking for.
Birth?
That's what Let's Grow Kids is asking for. $800 million a year plus. More than that. It's like 835 or 855 or something like that. And you know that that's a low estimate. Well, you consider that we pay about $1.6, $1.7 billion a year for the entire K-12 system. That's a almost 50% increase. Imagine what that's going to do to your property taxes. And you know, you're wiping out all these small businesses at the same time. I think it's really a tragedy.
It is a tragedy in many ways. But you know what else it's going to do? It's going to drive more people out of the state, and there will be fewer people paying the tab.
It will be. And this is the last point I want to make about the $15 minimum wage is our Joint Fiscal Office has pointed out that it's going to be a drag on the economy. It's going to lower our economy, our gross state product by, I think it was 0.3% a year, which doesn't sound like a big number until you understand that the total GDP growth for 2017, which I think was the last we have numbers, was 1.1%. So it's basically cutting GDP growth down by about a third.
Sure.
So that's pretty significant. And when you look at the number, they also determined that it's going to cost. I think it's like 2,800 people their jobs over a 10-year period or something like that. But those jobs, the people who are losing their jobs are low-income workers. It's a small percentage. It's like 0.5% of the total number of jobs in the state. There are like 315,000 jobs in the state. And
people employed.
Yeah, people employed. And so 0.5% of those are going to lose their jobs. But a full 3.3% are low-income workers. So this is disproportionately putting low-income workers out of work. And that just really doesn't make sense. It never makes sense to do anything to slow down the economic growth of the state. That hurts everybody. But this disproportionately hurts low-income workers. It's not a fair policy. It's not a sound policy. Most of these jobs, there's such a shortage of labor in Vermont right now.
Oh.
The prevailing wage is driving up the cost of labor to, in many cases, more than $15 an hour. That's how you want it to happen, organically. But still, there are opportunities for people to get in on that low rung of the wage scale, particularly young people, particularly people who are coming here that maybe have very few skills, that need to get that first bit of work under their belt so they can start climbing up. And this is really going to hurt them.
In Franklin County, there are a number of those jobs available. I see signs we're hiring workers needed. I see it, it's at UPS, it's at both grocery stores, the big ones, Hannaford's and Price Chopper, and there are other places, and the industrial park.
Mm-hmm.
needs people, but they need people with skills.
Yeah.
And there are some, I think, entry-level jobs in those other places, but you still have to have some skills. You either have to have people skills or technological skills or whatever, you know.
And that's where you learn those skills in your first job, in your first minimum wage job. And it's can you show up on time? It's can you
Very important.
speak respectfully to the customers? Can you work respectfully with your boss?
People skills, yes.
You know, it's those basic people skills. And once you establish those, believe me, they'll keep you.
Yeah.
because they can't afford to lose you.
Exactly.
In this environment. As a worker, you've got the upper hand today.
And if these employers end up saying we can't find people to work, so how can we use technology, or can we use technology to replace people? But then what happens? You have people then who aren't working, and then they maybe cost the taxpayers more. It's a vicious cycle. There's another thing I saw quickly as I was browsing through on my computer earlier today. The unfunded teacher and state employees retirement fund and healthcare fund, and I can't remember. There's a big difference in these numbers. But I think I read that we were going to need $60 million.
That's $6 billion.
Well, I know it's
Oh, $60 million, I think it's just for this year.
this 1 year.
Just for this 1 year.
Yeah.
But the unfunded liability is about $6 billion.
And it wasn't long ago that it was $3 billion.
Yes, it's going up quickly. And this is another important, this is one of those sleeper issues that nobody understands or wants to pay much attention to. But, you know, unfunded pension liabilities, you know, that's just
And
kind of
healthcare.
that's a sleeper, but it really is important. In fact, Warren Buffett was just quoted in an article, in an interview the other day, saying, "I am telling companies, look at states with unfunded pension liabilities, and if they have a high unfunded pension liability, don't go to set up shop there, because at some point they're going to have a massive tax bill come through, and they're likely going to be looking at you to pay it. So find, you know, a state that's got its act together in terms of pensions and go there."
So what has happened in the last, let's say, 5 or 10 years that we're not adequately funding that? And then there's another thing that goes along with that. It wasn't long ago that the teachers were asked to increase their contribution, which is, I believe, minimal right now. The taxpayers fund most of their retirement and health care. And I'm wondering why. Why are we doing that? Nobody paid for mine.
Well, they've made their contractual obligations to pay these pensions, and some of them, you know, from our perspective, are not what we would get in the private sector. We'll put it that way. But nobody wants to tell the unions, very powerful political unions, hey, we're going to have to switch you from a defined benefit program to a defined contribution program like a 401k, and
the people can't afford it.
That's the fight. But what's going to happen is the unions, I think, are really doing their membership a disservice by holding out for this. Because what's happened in states like Rhode Island and other municipalities that have gone bankrupt over these pension funds is the workers end up getting significantly less in the long run than they would have gotten if they had reformed the system. So, you know, I hope that they will take this seriously, and I do hope that they'll start funding it.
Okay.
But
well, there's a lot to absorb, isn't there?
there is. You know, another one that I wanted to put on the list to discuss is the paid family leave, because I think that's another one that, as I said, the Senate has passed the $15 minimum wage. That's going over to the House. So, you know, if you want to have that conversation with your representative about the $15 minimum wage would be a good one. The paid family leave bill is still in the House. They're going to try and get it out before crossover, which I think is now been pushed back a week to the 15th or something of this month. But paid family leave, again, this is a great bumper sticker.
Where does it come from?
It comes from a new payroll tax. Where does the idea come from?
Yeah, the idea.
I think you see a lot of people when they have a child, they want to stay home with the child for an extended period of time to bond, and that's great. I think that's wonderful. We're not here to say that paid family leave is a bad idea. It's a wonderful idea. It's a great benefit that companies give to their employees. It's one way that they can attract good employees and keep good employees with that benefit. But it shouldn't be something that the taxpayers are mandated to participate in. That's just not.
But these are
not their
public
role.
employees.
These are all employees.
I know, but the ones that are costing us are the ones that we're responsible for paying for that fund for them, right?
No, this would be a fund for everybody. Well, there's two plans. The governor's plan is more similar towards what you're talking about. He wanted to limit it to public employees, and he wanted it to be voluntary, and he wanted it to be in partnership with New Hampshire. The Democrats and progressives in the leadership in Montpelier said to that, we're not doing it, so there's no point in discussing it. Their plan is a payroll tax that everyone in the state would be forced to pay into if you're earning a paycheck. Because that's what a payroll tax is.
Right.
It's a tax on your paycheck. And it would be just under 1%, and it would raise about $107 million to start. Now, I want you to put this in perspective. $100 million tax. The entire state income tax of Vermont raised from Vermonters in the last year that they have a record for it, I think it was about $517 million. So this is about 20% of the income tax. This is 20% of the total income tax take for Vermont for this one program, for this one little program, and it's going to become an entitlement program, and it's going to require a new bureaucracy, as well as a new tax and a new IT system.
More government workers.
Now you know how well the state does with IT systems.
Yeah.
Like Think Vermont Health Connect.
I know.
It still doesn't work.
I know.
And I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars we poured into this. Now, guess what the estimate?
Thank you, Mr. Shumlin.
Guess what the estimate for the new IT system was, as presented by I forget who it was who presented, but this was
For this program.
for the program. Give me a guess. How much is the new IT system going to cost?
Just for the
Give me a range, because they gave a range.
Just for the system,
Just
not
for the system.
employees.
Just for the system. Just for the putting in the new IT computer system.
Well,
for
since I
tracking.
have absolutely no comprehension of what these things cost, I'm going to say $100 million.
Well, wow, that's high.
Okay.
That's high. It's not $100 million.
$50 million?
But it was $500,000 to $80 million.
Oh.
That was the range. $500,000 to $80 million.
Narrow it down, please.
But that just illustrates how little they know about what it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
And so they just threw out a number. Well, for the purposes of passing the bill, we're going to estimate between $10 and $15 million that it's going to cost for the IT system. Put this new thing, but it's going to cost more than that. It's going to cost a whole lot more than
course.
that. And it's probably never going to work because this thing is going to be extremely, extremely complicated.
Well, the people who are, and plus all the new employees in this particular department, right? And then their benefits.
Yep. And that's true, but I want to talk also a little bit about fraud, because this isn't just if you have a baby. This is if you have
A family
member who's dealing with an illness. And again, that sounds great. Okay, I've got a family member who's sick, and you want to stay home with that kid or stay home with an ailing parent, and you can understand the sympathy and the heart. It's important to point out that most companies in Vermont already have some form of formal or informal agreements with their employees to let them go. And if somebody passes away or somebody's sick, if you got a sick kid, they will work it out. They'll work it out. But this is going to be the mandated program. And somebody now has to police these claims. Because if you got a baby, okay, here's the baby. I'm holding up the baby. You can see that it's got a baby.
Real.
But it's real. But what happens if you say, and they're making this extremely expansive because it's, any relationship. It's like if it's a husband or if somebody who's living with you in the role of a spouse, or if it's, somebody who has a parental relationship to you. It could be, your neighbor who raised you as a kid. They want it to be, kind of everybody.
Not a blood relative.
It's not necessarily a blood relative. So what if I say, my Aunt Tilly's got the shingles and I've got to go take care of her for the next 6 weeks, pay my salary at 100% for that 6 weeks, up to about a little over $1,000. By the way, she lives in Honolulu, so forward the check there. And it just happens to be February. Somebody's going to have to say, okay, well, who's Aunt Tilly? And,
where's the verification? Is it on the honor system?
There's going to have to be verification. Those things are going to have to be chased down. But think about all the work that's going to go into chasing those things down and finding out if they're valid or not.
And this is not just for government employees. This is for all workers who get a paycheck.
Everybody, yep.
So does that include a young person who's...
Yeah, well, you vest into the program. It's like an insurance program, but I think it's after about $1,000 worth of salary, that you've earned $11,000 worth of salary, then you will have paid enough of the tax that you would be vested for the program. And it's crazy because I think a lot of people, they're estimating this is going to cost $107,000 in benefits, because they're basing it on numbers like this is what's done today. But once you put this program in place, the incentive to take advantage of it is going to change the dynamic in such a way that more people are going to take advantage of it. So it's already a lowball figure, and then that $100 million is going to, I think, is going to go through the roof. Because if you're vested in this program, why wouldn't you take it?
I'd like to know where all the money's going to come from for all of these programs that you're talking about.
Well, this is a payroll tax. This comes right off the top of your paycheck. And the other thing we talked about is a carbon tax. So it'll come off your home heating oil bill, your propane bill, your gasoline tax. That's where it's going to come from.
I just had a propane delivery.
And the $15 minimum wage, all of those added costs are going to come, out of your wallet when you go to buy a good or a service.
So, how many states are doing these kinds of things, and how many people are going to stay here? We have an older population, comparatively, and I think second highest elderly population in the country. And a lot of these people are living on a fixed income. And I'm wondering if they have the ability, how many of them are going to say bye-bye?
I think a lot of them are.
And then you're losing people who have been paying into all the programs in the state for years. And they're being forced out. And I know too many of them. At the age I am, I talk with a lot of people, and I hear a lot of people talking about getting out of this state. And you know what's going to happen? You may not even be able to sell your property if you own, because people are going to look at what it costs to live here, and unless they're wealthy, they're going to say, no thanks. Mm-hmm. So then you're in the bind of, can I sell my property? That's another...
It's certainly an important consideration. And we saw this over in New York with Governor Cuomo saying, oh my goodness, all my wealthy citizens are moving to Florida.
Well, why do you think that?
Of course they are. And you saw Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the new freshman...
Oh, taxing 70% of the wealthy...
Well, look what she did with Amazon. They had Amazon was coming into that district in Queens, and she chased them away with all the, the hostility.
But can you tell me anything specific about what it was that drove them out? Was it about taxing high-income people?
It was, we don't want you, we want taxes. She was complaining about the tax package that the city and the state had put together to attract Amazon to come. And she's like, oh, we could use all that money, that $3 billion tax package to spend on public transportation or something. But what she didn't seem to realize is that it's not like you're giving Amazon a $3 billion check to move in. It's basically once they've invested all their money in
Oh,
there, they
sure.
get $3 billion worth of tax breaks.
All those jobs.
As the project moves forward, and all of those jobs were going to be paying the hundreds of millions or tens of millions that would have gotten them that $3 billion
that young
dollar tax
woman-
break. I'm not particularly in favor of giving special treatment to companies, so I'm sympathetic with her to that extent. But it was really short-sighted, and she clearly didn't understand what it was she was doing.
This brings another, I know we have other things we can talk about, but this brings another thought to mind that sometimes I think about. This resentment of people who are innovative, who start a business when they're young, and they build it through blood, sweat, and tears, working like, what's the one in on Shelburne Road? He ran for Tarrant.
Oh, Rich Tarrant.
Rich Tarrant, yeah, and his partner. They started out working in a garage, at one of their homes, and they both worked for IBM. Mm-hmm. And their managers told them, "You'll never make it. Mm-hmm. It's not doable." Well, they both said, we believe we can, and we're leaving IBM, and they did. And they started out in the garage, figuring out what they wanted to do. Well, they both became millionaires and provided a great service. So why shouldn't they enjoy their money? Why should that belong? They pay taxes, they provide jobs. Those are two benefits to the area. So why penalize them? Why resent them? Admire them, respect them, find out how they did it. So maybe you can do it instead of whining and moaning and groaning about people who are wealthy. I say God bless them. Who are the people who donate to the Red Cross and to the local food shelf and all these other places? There are people who can afford to do so.
Yep.
And it's not the poor, God bless them, who can afford to, go. They can provide their time, perhaps, and try to make a difference that way. There's always a way to help, whether you have money or not. But this resentment of people with money, I've never had money, big money, always worked. And I never resented anybody. I say, wow, good for them. What is this attitude?
I don't know where it comes from, but there is an anti-business attitude, and there does seem to be a lot of resentment for people who are successful, and that's why I do think we need to talk a little bit about the morality of capitalism and why capitalism is so important, and why I wanted to talk about this popularity of socialism is creeping up with millennials and the generation that's following them, Generation Z, even more. They say they want to live in a socialist country. Well, look at the socialist countries out there. Look at Venezuela. Venezuela. Yeah. This was the fourth wealthiest country in the world not very long ago, and then they adopted socialism, and now there's an internet blackout. There's a power outage, and they're eating water. They're eating zoo animals. And people are fleeing across the border into Colombia with all the problems Colombia has as a sanctuary to get away from Venezuela. That's socialism, folks, and it's not just you're taking a bad example. It is the worst example that we can look at, except for maybe North Korea. Yeah. Which is again,
those people are dying.
When the soldiers defect from North Korea, they're smaller and they're dealing with the parasitic infections, and they're malnourished. Yep. That's socialism, folks, and. Cuba, another example, people living in abject poverty in a police state. This is not really where you want to go as far as a society is.
For sure. Socialism is not about individual empowerment and control over your own life. It's government control of you, your life, your country, everything. And it's certainly not something that fits in with the founding principles of the United States of America. And that is why we're doing the Liberty Camp for for young people in July in St. Albans for 3 mornings.
Yeah, that'll
And
be fun.
Thank you so much.
This will be year 3
I
of
know,
Liberty Camp, and,
I know.
and it's just been a lot of fun.
And people are calling up and wanting their children there to learn about, why we left England, why the founders left England and came to this country, and about the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, all of these critical documents that provide us with the opportunities, the rights, the freedoms in this country. And then when the children are learning about socialism and Sharia law and everything, this has to counter that. And I don't know if I should mention this now, but Fox News sent Pete Hegseth from Fox and Friends to St. Albans.
Oh, that's right. I saw that.
On Friday. And he is the nicest fellow, so friendly, and just talked with so many people at the Maple City Diner. I happened to be one of them. And when I saw he had a free moment, I said to myself, wait a minute, Linda. So I went over to him and I said, Pete, I'm organizing a Liberty Camp for students to learn about our country. He said, really? And I said, yes. So I said, you know what? I have a flyer. I'm going out to the car and I bring it back. So I brought it back and I showed it to him, handed it to him, and he's reading that and he says, this is fantastic. He says, we need to do this all over the country. He said, can I have this?
Yeah, maybe we can get him to come back and do a show on it.
Well, maybe.
That would be exciting. But it's funny, I have to tell you, I meant to bring that up, congratulations, because I don't watch TV. I don't have cable. We cut the cord years ago. But I happened to be in a place where I had cable, and I was watching Fox and Friends that morning.
Oh,
and
you were?
That's like the only time I've watched Fox and Friends in the last year. And I missed you. I turned it on, but it was like was Mariana Gamache on there? There was somebody that I knew.
Marianne, what's her last name? I should know. I'm sorry. Doobie.
Oh, maybe it was her.
Marianne Doobie.
Maybe, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah, I was sitting right beside her, but it was fun. And I ended up getting texts from high school classmates or from around the country and phone calls from Florida, and one person says, well, now that you're a star, how much is it going to cost me for a picture and your autograph?
Well, that's fun.
It was a lot of fun. And it was great that they came here. He was here from 6 o'clock in the morning till 11.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So he gave me his cell phone number, his email, excuse me. So I've been so busy since, but I'm going to email him and see if we can maybe come up with a plan.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
It would be great to get him to come to the camp.
Yeah, come up and do a little story about trying to take liberty back and get, if not Generation Z, then Generation
Z is all the young people.
Yeah, that's after the millennial generation. So
Okay.
I forget the exact dates.
Okay.
But when we talk about the founding principles of the country, we don't just adhere to them because they're old, and we don't just adhere to them because it's tradition.
They work.
We adhere to them because they work and they're fair, and they're based on moral principles that are
Christian,
timeless.
Judeo-Christian principles.
And some of the morality of free market capitalism that I think a lot of people don't understand is, when I guess the best definition that I've seen is from Hayek, where he says it's free. It's when people are free to engage in commerce or free from force or fraud.
Yes.
Free from force or fraud. Don't we all want to live in a society that is free of force and fraud? That means nobody can knock you over the head and take something from
Exactly.
you, and nobody can cheat you. That's the role of government, is to make sure that we don't hit each other over the head and cheat you. That means
lawful.
That means everything is. I'll put it in another word that's used a lot today, is consensual. So if I want to buy your reading glasses from you there, we have to come to a consensual
Yes,
agreement. And if
yes.
you don't agree, then it doesn't happen. If I
Right.
don't agree, then it doesn't
That's
happen.
free enterprise.
But that's fair. That is fairness. There's a certain fairness to that. The other thing is that's wonderful, I think, about capitalism is people say that profit is a bad thing. Well, really, what profit is tangible evidence that you have provided value to your fellow human being.
Whoever
he
you
or she
have
or they
something for sale,
is. Yep.
and I come into the store and it's something I really want, and I'm willing to pay for it.
Yep. Consensually.
Yes, then you have the money, you make a profit because you didn't pay as much to buy it,
Yep.
to put it on sale as you're selling it for, but that's fine. It's worth it to me to have it.
It's worth it to you to have it. I have created something that you value.
Right.
And before I can help myself to take your $10 from whatever it is I've sold you for $10 and go buy my sandwich and eat, I have to provide you with something of value first.
Absolutely.
So it puts somebody before you. It puts somebody else in your society, in your community, before yourself at every step of the way.
Yeah.
Again, that's a moral principle that's at work in free market capitalism. It's not at work in the collectivist society, whereas I take what I want when I want because I need. That's very different.
Yes.
And it's not based on consent, it's based on force. It's like, I want those glasses, I need those glasses. Government is going to force you to give them to me, whether I provide you of something with equal or better value or not. That's not, in my opinion, a particularly moral society in which to live.
And it's right in concrete in the U.S. Constitution that there are certain things that government is responsible for, and this isn't one of them. Commerce is between you individuals is not one of them, nor education, nor healthcare. That's not a role of government.
No, they have gone well beyond what the Constitution allows them to do.
Why aren't we fighting back?
That's a good question. If an unconstitutional tree falls in the woods and nobody complains, is it unconstitutional?
Yes.
I agree with you, it is, but it needs to be adjudicated and go through the courts, and that's unfortunate. I mean, the culture has changed so badly that they think they can get rid of everything. You remember with the prohibition of alcohol?
Well, I wasn't exactly around.
I wasn't around either, but I remember from the history books. But consider the mentality of the people who were running Congress in those days. In order to prohibit alcohol, they understood they needed to pass a constitutional amendment because they, as federal government, elected officials, did not have the authority under the Constitution to do that. Today, if they wanted to ban something like alcohol or this, do you think they would say, do we have the constitutional authority to do this or not? No, they would just do it.
That's where we come in.
That's where we come in, and that's a failing. I think that's a real moral failing of the people that we've elected to office. They do not respect the constraints that they're put under when they're sent there, and too often we let them get away with it because, hey, I don't care if it's against the rules or not because it's going to benefit me in some way.
Well, the founders knew and said frequently that the only way that our form of government with empowerment of the individual and a government that is confined in what it can do is if the people elect moral people and if the people are vigilant and involved in government.
And I think we're losing some of that.
You think so?
I think so in a big way. I don't think...
Well, and guess what? The harder that government makes it for the individual to thrive, the harder the individual is going to have to work and therefore pay less attention to what government is doing. But in my belief, the more that government does for you, the less power you have over your own life.
That's exactly true. But as I said, we're fighting back. We are fighting back. That's what the Ethan Allen Institute is here for. And I hope that people will check out our website at ethanallen.org.
Yes.
And look at some of the tools that we provide to
Great
you
job.
as citizens. As I said, those roll call reports are great. We have legislator profiles that we do for every legislator. I confess with 41 new ones, we haven't gotten them all up to date as yet, but the
It's
ones
work.
that are there, it's a lot of work. Lots of good stuff on the blog where you can read about these issues. If you want to learn more about the $15 minimum wage, just go into search, hit $15 minimum wage, and you'll have a ton of articles that you can read and blog posts. We put together issue briefs on some of the key issues on things like the carbon tax and then paid family leave and health care. It really is a tremendous asset, and we hope you'll sign up. We don't bombard people with emails. We send out a Friday email, and once a month we have a electronic newsletter.
Oh, I love that.
That we send out to folks. But unless we've got a special event coming up, like a Liberty Camp.
Well, and you also go and speak. And you speak at various organizations.
I do. I have presentations that I put on at Rotary clubs and local committees. I've had just groups of citizens that want to learn more about an issue call me up and say, hey, we got a dozen people that want to meet in the local library. And I'm happy to do that sort of thing.
Well, I'll have to think about what I can do along those lines, because you're so well informed. You present things clearly so that they're easy to comprehend. And I know that you do it because you care. And, it's important to have a voice for the people to hear about what is happening, because, as I said earlier, a lot of people don't have the time or make the time to get themselves involved. But to get on ethanallen.org and True North as well.
True North? I don't work with True North, but they're friends.
You're right.
They pick up a lot of the stuff that I write. They're certainly friends and allies, but I'm not affiliated with them officially.
Yeah. But we need more people like you, making sure that the word gets out there and the facts get out there, and that people have that resource. So I'll think about, maybe I'll get a group of people together.
That'd be fun. Well, I've got a really good presentation that I just started giving on the morality of capitalism. It's about a half hour long. And, I think a lot of fun and something that we really need to do more is talk about the morality of why we believe what we believe. Because so often the left does that. They talk about emotional issues and you're immoral if you don't want to give people free stuff, but basically you're stealing it from your neighbor in order to give it to somebody else.
And my philosophy has always been that we mostly appreciate the things that we've had to work for and earn. When everything is just handed to you, how do you...
I got to tell you, I think that, we're dealing with an opioid crisis in the state of Vermont.
Oh, that's
and I think this is a big reason why, is because I think when the government replaces parents, when the government replaces, a breadwinner in the family, when the government comes in and takes away all those little responsibilities that, give meaning to life, life becomes meaningless.
Yeah, that's true.
And, what are people left? They're searching for something that's been taken away from them by government, and they're filling it with poison. And it's awful and it's tragic. But I think
you give over your life to let government, take charge. And where's the satisfaction? Yeah, we're down to 1 minute. So, folks, I hope you learned a lot tonight. I'd like to think that you didn't call in because you were mesmerized by the topics. But thank you for tuning in, Rob. Thank you so much for coming back. It's always great to have you here.
It's always fun to be here.
Lots of information imparted to the folks, and hope you'll think about all that and do your own investigating too, okay? I will see you again next week, and have a great week ahead, and see you then. Good night.